Okay, so hello everyone. It's my great pleasure and honor to moderate today Roundtable in the frame of Brave New Literature Festival. Thank you for having us, me and my wonderful guests from many interesting countries representing literary field in general, but having a very diversified background. We will be talking about the future, which is maybe a bit mysterious, but we all have plans, hopes, and predictions. So I hope to talk today about all those things that we are going to do, or we already know that they are not going to happen, because we also have to be prepared for any scenario. I hope that our conversation will be fruitful and interesting. We have an hour to discuss all those interesting things with my guests, who are Pepe Olona from Arrebiato Libros Publishing, manager of the Las Poetas Festival from Spain, from Madrid.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Aleš Šteger is also with us, a poet, but also maybe mainly in the frame of this conversation, director of Days of Poetry and Wine. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
And John Kenyon from Iowa City. John is quite early in the States, right?
It is, yes.
John is a coordinator of UNESCO City of Literature in Iowa City, as well as chair of the Literary Sub-Network in the frame of UNESCO Creative Cities Network.
Yes. Hi.
Hello, John. My name is Elżbieta Foltyniak, and I also represent the literary sector, because I am a coordinator of Kraków UNESCO City of Literature in Poland. So I have some perspective as well on the topics that we are going to talk about. And before we move to the future, which is the main topic of our discussion today, I would like to maybe focus for a moment on the present, on the status quo, on the current state. And I think it's good to do a short diagnosis, maybe mapping of the literary sector. And I would like you to say very, very briefly, very openly about your perspective. What is, in your opinion, most challenging for literature today in a very general meaning? What needs of the literary sector could be identified today? I am sure that pandemic will show up somehow, but let's try to think about it very broadly, about needs and requirements that we face on daily basis. And it might be a perspective of your organization, your personal view, but also from your country, from your city, depending on your experience and what would you like to share with us. So I don't know, Pepe, would you like to start?
Okay. Well, first of all, in my opinion, I think we are in a good moment, at least in Spain. There are a lot of publishers of poetry. For example, 10 years ago, it was so difficult to find as much publishers as now and good publishers. I think the pandemic, well, it's obviously a crisis, a huge crisis across the world, but also it has been an opportunity. Many people has come back to read. Well, you know, the statistic says that at least here in Spain, the booksellers last year was a great year of selling. So I think it's a good moment in many ways. For example, in poetry world that I am focused there, we are working hard for many years trying to professionalize this sector. You know, the poetry always is a genre that is forgotten for everyone and for everyone, because, you know, we are people that usually is considered like it's a hobby, but not a profession. And we are trying just to change this opinion from the society. And the poets, the publishers who work in this field our dream is that they will become to work and to live just working with poetry. So for in my opinion and for me, the main challenge that we have for these next 5-10 years is that to get this professionalization of poetry. I don't know what my partners think about.
That's very interesting perspective, and it is very important what you said about poetry, because I think it is quite universal across the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would be happy to, excuse me, to jump in, because something that Pepe had said is kind of what I had been thinking, and I had been looking at it in some ways from both a positive and a negative aspect, and that's the fact that during the pandemic, people did read more. Booksellers across the world were selling more. And then once people were able to get back out and start doing things again, we saw a little bit of a tailing off. And so really it's something that literature has faced for a long time, but it's competing with other demands on people's attention. And when people were limited in what they could do, they came back to books. It's like they know that a book is a wonderful thing that they can engage with to entertain themselves, to educate themselves. But we're constantly competing with the screens in people's lives, in their ability to just get out and do things, because reading is seen as such a solitary thing. But at the same time, we found that when people don't have other things that are competing for that attention, that's where they turn. They turn to a book, they turn to stories and poetry and essays. And so we know that there's an underlying desire to engage with literature. And now that people have those greater demands, we need to figure out ways to continue to hold on to them. So that's, again, just kind of playing off what was said before, that's a real challenge and opportunity for us, I think.
I agree very much with John and what Pep said. In Slovenia or this part of the world, Central Europe, I would say the situation is quite similar, and it's interesting to see how up to what extent some tendencies can be generalized. On the other hand, if I think we are all facing a hold when it comes to innovation. At least non-mainstream forms of literary expression, of artistic expression with words need a very, how shall I say, they need a challenging environment. They need a very intense exchange in order to be able to innovate. If they're not innovating, be it at art forms or the communication channels or the ways how to bring texts out to the world, they fall back behind the more louder forms of expression. And I think that's basically what we are all now asking ourselves. Was there a major hold in innovation? I know, just from a personal point of view, within the last couple of years, I interacted more intensely with the people I knew before, but of course, I made much less new friends, as probably everyone did. On a professional level, I think this has consequences, and also in ways how to do things. This has consequences which are being felt mostly at the youngest generations. I really very fear that there will be some kind of lost generation that we will all somehow be facing, and we have to think really about ways how to fill this gap and how to get young people to have the opportunities we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to add, for example, that I lived 1 week ago here in the bookshop. well, some parents came here and explained to me that there's a new tendency. Their children, their sons, their daughters were starting just to be fed up of the screens, as John and Alice said. And they're starting to come back to read and to take a book instead of using screens. For me, it was a dream. It's not possible. It has to be an exception because I don't see it there everywhere. But well, at least well, I don't know if it's a tendency, but I am completely sure that even audiobooks, ebooks, screens, and this kind of stimulation you receive, nothing is comparable as a book. A book has its smell, its tones, no, its taste, its head, many things. That a book is more important. So I think that we have to work in that way. And I am completely sure that young people, young people from now and the new generations will remain reading books. I think just we have to work in many ways and how to mix the literature, the poetry with the new tools as social media, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so I see two lines, two paths we could follow. One on the basis of what you've just said. One is more focused on audiences and readers, and the main question would be: is it only a moment of focus for literature? Is there something that we should do to maintain this interest in books? We should use the moment. How could we do that? What is our role? But on the second hand, it is important to remember about the industry and the professional side of the literary sector. We have readers who are more into books, but also we have independent small bookstores which suffered because people buy books via internet. It was much cheaper, it was more accessible, and so on. So maybe let's focus on the first question. Is there something that we should know and we should react now to maintain this interest of maybe young people mostly into books?
Well, one thing that I had actually jotted down before we talked is in terms of challenges and things that we could do to respond to that I think speaks to this is that in some ways the establishment needs to get out of the way. And what I mean by that is we have established gatekeepers that kind of curate what people are supposed to read. You know, we have the major publishers, we have those of us that run festivals, and not that we need to completely step aside, but I do think that we need to acknowledge that there are many other people who can contribute to that conversation to help people determine what they can read, what's available to read. When festivals, give over a track of programming to young people, those people are programming events that most of us might not have thought of, and giving them that buy-in and that opportunity to participate directly in picking what they're going to interact with, I think can definitely be a way to keep that engagement, to re-engage people who maybe have fallen away. And it's so easy now, I think of, the music industry where, record labels are almost irrelevant because people can get their music out through many other formats. And I think literature is getting there in terms of that. It's always been there in terms of having the tools, but I think people are much more receptive to receiving things. They don't need Simon & Schuster on the spine of a book to know that it is quality. That certainly can indicate that, but it might be that word of mouth is that much more important now. And so I think that kind of shift toward giving people more autonomy and more agency in terms of being able to choose what they read and how they engage can help us with that.
I think there are very different perspectives when it comes to smaller languages and smaller markets, because I think if you're working within a framework of let's say not only English but Spanish, Chinese, the French, bigger languages, I think there is a capability of the market to regulate itself to a certain extent and to speak out what is good and what is not good. When it comes to many smaller languages, and I work within the framework of a very small market, let's say, it's completely impossible to think about a professional environment without, on one hand, state support, on the other hand, without firm institutions that have to be on all sides, be it among publishers or festivals or other kinds of enterprises. So I think every context has its pro and contras, and one has to think very much according to the locality of where something is happening. But I think this pandemic contributed basically to this kind of thinking in a way, and it's something both positive and negative. On one hand, we could see, I don't know how it was in your case, we could see there was a movement towards local authors or authors who tell local stories. And sometimes I missed during the last years a bit more of internationalism, because it's the framework where really high standards are being set. On the other hand, this local orientation creates perhaps a more firmer backbone for institutions and for a certain readership. I think the biggest difficulties in the next couple of years are waiting for all of us who have produced live events. We will have to think it very much through how to do it in the future, and how to do it in an effective way. And it's not only, let's say, being produced with the goal of producing another literary spectacle, but truly to engage with the audiences and truly to find new innovative ways how to engage new readers. It's a big challenge we are all facing.
Yeah, regarding you have said, Aleš, right now, here in Spain also it's true that it's not the same, the poets and writers that writes in Spanish or writes in Catalan or minor languages. They have more difficulties to go and to present their work, just to publish, to be translated. But also, you know, and you feel the difference of the opportunities that they have once you want to hire them to perform in a literary festival, in a poetry festival, because the people prefer just to hire a Spanish poet than a Catalan poet, because everyone will understand him or her. So, and regarding John said, for example, here we are trying to work the poetry as music. So one part is the book and one part is the performance of the poet. So many of the times the poet earns more money performing that with the rights of the books. So we are trying just to change this point of view. The book is a part, but it's not all. It's just one part of a lot of work that you have to do. So, well, that was my two positions.
So maybe the idea for the future, it just came to my mind. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's going beyond the literary borders and merging literature with music, with new media, and mixing those disciplines to offer a new quality to our audiences. Because it is clear that we have to redefine our festivals, our events, meetings, and this format. So maybe we should search for new partnerships, and maybe we should look beyond the literary borders. curators, which is also hard because Aleš, you mentioned about the state support, and of course the body that decides on the money issue are focused on those divisions. So literature is one thing to be supported, music is the other one, but maybe it is an idea for the future. What do you think about it?
I think definitely it's what we are probably doing mostly already over a couple of years, but now this is being intensified. We all are searching for this innovation that I was talking initially about within the frameworks of what we are doing. And especially, I think, perhaps this might be very different in the States or in bigger markets, but I think usually people working within our frameworks try to be to reach a high level of knowledge, not only within a very specific framework. They're not only a great editorial house, but they become also organizer of events. They become film producers. They become, I mean, many things. They diversify within their range, and they try to set up something which is some kind of operational framework which is much beyond the classical understanding of publisher or festival or let's say any kind of literary institutions.
Yeah, I would agree with what my fellow panelists have said, that you know, looking for ways to get outside of those kind of traditional you know, authors standing in front of an audience reading and speaking is going to be something that we can do to engage. And we see that a lot with festivals in our area or here across the US and I know around the world, where they're looking to incorporate things with music. They're looking to bring together people from outside the world of literature to have conversations with writers. It's you know, that cross-cutting is designed to bring in audience beyond what we maybe traditionally see. And I think that's been successful. And I think as we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully coming out of the pandemic someday, that we'll be looking to do more of that, because some of the innovations that people have come up with during this time and incorporating you know, video, bringing in people from other parts of the world to interact with local authors, while at the same time highlighting local authors because they're here. All of that is going to be brought to bear to do bigger and better things in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that is a quote that now I am seeing here in Madrid many times that people wears. It's something like read is sexy, no, reading is sexy. So I think that we have to work in that point of view, in that direction, just to try to take the young people back from that digital entertainment and just to come back to read and to see literature as a funny genre. It's something funny. No? I think that is maybe one of our main challenges, as you ask about it, what we have to do just to change this point of view. Because, for example, here in Spain, the teenagers, right now, when they want to say that something is boring, they say too much text. No, so it's incredible. It's not possible. So I think that we have to change this point of view.
Yeah, we've talked about innovations. We've talked a lot about innovations, which are obviously needed, and but it's important to remember that the digital events, digital dimension of literature, is also a kind of innovation that showed up last year, 2 years. It's 2 years now, and we are used to this form now. We are now talking through Zoom. which is natural for everyone. And of course, we are suffering from a kind of fatigue, and we are very tired of digital events as audience, as readers and audiences. But on the other hand, we have to remember about people that are looking to this form of getting the culture into their homes. I mean, disabled people and underrepresented groups. And thanks to this digital way, we could reach new audiences. And I'm wondering how to combine this this fatigue and how to deal with it, not to cut the access to the culture for disabled people who just cannot attend in person in offline meetings. I think it's one of the most important issues for the future, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this digital area of culture? Because I think that is, on one hand, it's needed, but on the other hand, it's easy to overuse it.
If I may, I think there is no way back. For those who haven't been digital a couple of years ago, they became digital, and it will remain like that. I don't believe that everything will be done only through a digital way in this environment in the future. But whatever one will do, one will have to have at least a kind of a window in the digital world, some kind of exposure there, be it with recordings or part of the programs. They will remain there and they will happen there, which is of course very much also shifting the focus of producers. When we've been doing events 10 years ago, we've been thinking about whom to invite and how to program and how to make the environment agreeable as possible and how to promote. Now, essential part of planning is also how to record, how to stream, how to produce this. And this takes away, of course, also part of the budgets that went prior to this to either authors or other kind of producers. Now they go to digital productions. So there is also a new redistribution of means that are available within our literary world happening, and this will remain like that. I think in the future there is no way back.
Yeah, I would agree with Aleš that I think that, and mostly for the positive, that we will always have hybrid events. We had our book festival back in October, a very stripped down version of what we normally do. And we had a few in-person events. It was still in that pre-Omicron window where people were willing to come out if they were masked and vaccinated. We had them, spaced out in the room so that they could be comfortable with where they were. But at the same time, we also streamed everything live and had, for most of our events, an equal number of people watching online as we did in the room. The challenge is, as Aleš said, being in a space where you can produce the event. It's no longer that you just have somebody stand in front of a room of people and speak. You have to make sure that things are well lit and that you have a good sound and all of that. We were fortunate to be in a space that's kind of pre-configured to do that, which was wonderful. And then the challenge becomes allowing people online to interact in the same way that people in the room do. And so we have to constantly monitor the chat box to make sure that you're getting questions from those folks and interacting, or having them be able to ask a question at the same rate that people in the room are, so that everybody feels like they're part of the same event. And it worked well for us, but it is more work. It's more legwork at the beginning. At the same time, we tried to do an event with an author who was virtual and had her on the screen in the room, hoping that while people could dial in and watch it online, they could also sit in the room and watch and interact with other people. And there was a very small crowd for that. It seemed like people, if they're going to come out, they still want to be able to interact with the author live rather than watch them on a screen, which was understandable. It was part of a track of programming that we thought might keep a group of people there throughout the afternoon to talk about kind of thematically tied in books. So it's a constant evolution to try to figure out how to make that work. But I do think, and agree that hybrid is where that's the new normal, and everything else will just kind of branch out from there.
Well, I think there are two things or two options about digital activities, not only literary, cultural activities in general. I think one is just to try to translate the online show to digital, so that the people in their houses are watching something different, or are watching a performance in a stage or something like that. Or as right now that the people is watching us speaking over here. And another kind of activity is trying to use the tools that the digital dimension give us, trying to do a new thing, a thing that has never come before. And I think that there are many options there. I want to put an example. Well, Aleš from Persepolis created a festival of hope last year, as all Persepolis festivals weren't able to organize these festivals. Obviously, ours was one of them. And for example, we create a project that, well, I have explained a lot of times. Surely I will explain that, but I think it's a good example just to see how the digital options can give us to do another things. One partner of mine, of my team, he proposed us just to create a poem written for everyone, from everywhere, just using Twitter, using WhatsApp, using all the platforms that we have available. It was so difficult, it was hard, but it was possible. And right now there are, I think, more than 20,000 verses written for people from everywhere, and it's continuing working. It has not ended. Actually, the next week we have a trip just to Chile, and we will launch this poem to the universe using radio signals and an antenna, and it will arrive 600 years after right now. The poem will arrive. So it's an example, it's conceptual art, but we are trying just to use these possibilities just to create maybe a game. Maybe for many people it won't be poetry, or it doesn't matter, but it's a way just to use these no possibilities and to create art and to create end-to-end. And I think the digital dimension gives us the possibility just to change the direction of the art. For example, it's not vertical, it's not the artist and the audience, and maybe there exists the possibility to create a horizontal line, so to work in the same line, audience and artist. So, well, there's another option, for example, to investigate.
That's a really interesting perspective to delete this barrier between artist and the audience. It's very interesting. It's good to have it in mind. And but also I was wondering where you were speaking about the financial dimension of our activities, because you've mentioned that, I think it was Aleš who said that it's cheaper to not to pay for the flight. It's cheaper to pay for the transmission and to recording of the meeting. But I feel that it's not always like that, because if we plan an event engaging only local authors, we have to do this additional cost and add it to the overall cost, because we have to record this. So it's the costs are in fact higher than we expected. And I wanted to ask you about, because we are all somehow festival organizers, I wanted to ask you about the financial side. did the pandemic make it easier to plan and cheaper, or maybe the costs are very high because the technical issues are being advanced and the prices of recording are increasing? How does it look like in your countries?
I would say for us, for our festival that we did this fall, everything was significantly cheaper, mostly because, as has been pointed out, we did not fly people in from around the country. We didn't have to pay for hotel rooms. We didn't have to pay for venues that could accommodate larger audiences. And again, we were lucky. We're housed in the Iowa City Public Library, and they have facilities for recording events. And so we were able to use that staff and that technology. Were we not able to do that, I'm sure those costs would have been significantly higher, but I don't think they would offset the savings of not flying and lodging authors. That is far and away the largest part of our budget. And so, the technology, again, would be there. Now, in the future, if we fly authors in and we put them in hotels and we stream the events and we have to pay for them, then you're adding to, kind of what our traditional budget would have been, and then that will definitely be a challenge. But for now, it was not that way. And I do know that some festival organizers of other festivals here in our Iowa City area did see a significantly higher cost when it came to filming and sound and all of that. So that's definitely something that's going to factor in the future.
I mean, as John said, we've been lucky due to the fact that our festival is taking place end of August. It was just the time window which permitted to have also live events. So we flew people in, and Pep was with us, so he can say. But due to the fact that we had to produce, then also all the digital content costs rose immensely. And if you want to do it in a not only on basic standard, if you want to do something more sophisticated, and perhaps through this sophisticated high standard products reach also new audiences which more and more expect higher standards, then this there is really a radical shift when it comes to costs in production. That means in the future, more and more money will flow into production, post-production, and less into authors' fees. That means less authors, but more production connected to each and every of them, post-production. And this is also changing, I think, on the long term. It will have effect on how literary world functions, because festivals very often have this, or have had this side effect of being laboratories. People met there, unexpectedly exchanged good practices, or just had brainstorming about new ideas. And I expect that due to the fact that the money most probably for most festivals won't increase, it will be less of this. So we will have, the industry as such will have to think, and I'm now repeating myself over and over again, we will have to find new ways how to curb our interactions and inventions, the new, where it will come into being. I think festivals will be in the future much less place where this will be happening. There will be more production places, but there will be for sure other forms of interaction and exchange where innovation will happen. especially perhaps I have to point out here, I'm thinking from a perspective of how shall I say, cutting edge literary forms, not only mainstream. Mainstream has its ways how to deal with this, and I think very often it's different.
Yes, and actually, I always when you see a budget of when you do a budget to a poetry festival, for example, it's incredible, and it's a pity to see how the money goes to people that doesn't have any relations with the poetry. No, companies, hotels, and you say why? So we are spending the money, but it's not giving to people that work on poetry. So yes, regarding your question, yes, in Spain we did the festival. The last edition was in April, and obviously we had to focus only in national poets, in Spanish poets, because it wasn't able to invite people from overseas. So, well, I don't know what will happen in the future. I completely agree with both of you that we have to think in new ways and just to try to find how it will, how I don't know what will be, but I am completely sure, for example, that is changing the model of the festivals. For example, these huge festivals of music, 20,000 people, maybe, I don't know, but maybe the people will prefer another kind of festivals, smaller, just trying just to go in small audiences and just to find something more special. I don't know, but I think that we have to find new ways to walk, not only thinking in huge and big festivals, because the last decade has been a proliferation of this kind of models of culture. The biggest, it was important. So I think that maybe we have to make the smaller things and specialized things. I don't know. Maybe it's an option.
I think that you have raised a very important issue, which is artist situation in this new reality. And you said that a lot of money goes not directly to the artists and authors, but to the organization and streaming and so on. And I think that it may be, I don't know if you agree with me, that this is also our role to do a lobby and to make those comments and to put the pressure on decision makers to keep this more balanced, to not to forget about artists, about their fees, because they also suffered. They also lost sources of their fees. So it is also maybe our role to put literature somehow, somewhere to the cultural politics of our cities, of our countries, of our regions, of our boards, anywhere we can. Is it our responsibility? I mean, our or festival events, culture organizers, curators, or you wouldn't agree with that?
I think also there is a big difference in understanding how literary functions in society, I think, in different cultures. So probably when you, if you're talking about Europe, I'm sure that we have to be very, very visible and straightforward and demand very openly, not only from national governments, but also from Brussels, that they recognize the changes and they help us create an environment which is, I mean, which supports artists and creators. Partly this is happening. If I think about how little opportunities there were for artists to go to have a residency, and I mean 20 years ago, and you compare it to now, there are new networks evolving. I mean, if I understand correctly, John and Elżbieta, you both are involved in the network of UNESCO, and there are others, especially when it comes to nowadays in Europe, when it comes to questions of migration, of political pressure. These networks will be crucial to uphold civil society and support many artists which are in need. This is an increasing number. We live in very unstable times, and it's of utmost importance that these broader networks are not being financed exclusively from national governments or local governments, but in European case from Brussels, because this is the only way how to secure them in case that anything goes wrong in some of our countries, and we all know that very easily it can go wrong.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And as you had pointed out, both Ella and I represent UNESCO Cities of Literature. And just in the last probably 3 or 4 years, the opportunities for writers to participate in residencies in other cities of literature, for example, has grown significantly. And at the same time, I think that there's a greater awareness of residency opportunities, or just opportunities for authors to travel, to interact with other cities. And we've seen that even in virtual things, where getting at that point that Ella had made, that the cost of flying someone somewhere and putting them up can be extraordinary, but if you can redirect some of that money to the writer to do work, to take some time off and interact with a community virtually, that has borne fruit already in the last couple of years, as we have seen around our network. You know, to the point of lobbying or trying to get funding, you know, it is an interesting perspective that you have with the EU as being this kind of umbrella that can almost even things out or protect against you know, political vagaries that are going on that change levels of funding in individual countries. We obviously don't have that, but we have so many different levels governmentally of funding or support. You know, there's obviously the federal level with like the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities. Some of that money then trickles down to the state level and to the local level. And so there are many different agencies and many different levels that we are lobbying or trying to both get funding for our own programming and to suggest that they support artists and creators. And it feels like at times you could do nothing but lobby and try to change the minds of decision makers as they determine what their priorities are. And you know, we're certainly not alone in the world as being a place where the arts and culture seem to be the first that is cut when people are looking for ways to balance the budget. And so that's a constant struggle that I know we all face here.
I think that we are living a good moment in Europe regarding public funds, in Spain as well. But well, I think that we have to focus, continuing with this theme. For example, being conscious about the percentage of that earns a writer of a book. For example, they only earn 10% of each book sold, usually. Sometimes, and depending on the publisher, earns 15. For example, we pay 15-20, and the distribution and the booksellers earns, well, the booksellers around 30-40, and the distribution 15%, and the cost of production also 15%. So. So finally, the writer selling a book only earns €1 each 10. In the best of the cases, €2 of each 10. However, in selling an ebook, a digital book, they earn 60% of each book, because you lost all these distribution and booksellers. They earn a lot of more money. And in the third case, the same writer earns like 85% or 100% performing on a stage. So it's a completely difference. It's for me, it's really important just to have these different points of view when I speak with a writer, and I explain them that how they are able to earn money and where they have to focus. Obviously, not all the writers are able to perform. Not all the publishers are able to receive funds from public institutions, because it depends on you, it depends on how you work, it depends on funds. But obviously, I think that to keep your business alive, you have to be conscious about all these possibilities. That you have to be conscious that all the possibilities that there are to receive. I don't know how to explain in English, sorry, because it's difficult just to explain, because I have the vision in Spanish but not in English. But well, the question is that depending on who you focus on, what kind of literature, you have to find the best way just to get your results, well, somewhere.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree that the systematic solutions are highly needed, that we have to think very broadly about the literary sector. We have to take care of authors, audiences, and so on. And I feel from my perspective, and I think that maybe John will agree with me, that knowledge sharing is highly valuable, that we have this opportunity, for example, in the UNESCO network, to share our best practices. And it is very important to share the knowledge and to share experiences, because we can be up to date with our programs, solutions, ideas, problems as well. So I think that it is an idea for the future to be in touch and to be up to date and to share best practices among our institutions and across Europe, across the world. I think it's very, very precious. I think that we have to slowly go to the final question, because we are running out of time, but I wanted to ask about a very important issue, which is somehow connected to the COVID crisis, because COVID crisis is one of the crises we have, but also we have to face with the climate change. And of course, our festivals and our events are connected to this issue, because we talked about flights, for example, and producing the carbon footprint. Streaming also produces a carbon footprint, but maybe just a quick thought about and comment about our responsibility, and is there something that we could do to program our events and our activities, our opportunities for authors in a very sustainable way, to raise the awareness of the climate changes as well.
Yeah, Pep, did you want to go? Or okay. So I was thinking a lot about that, and my colleague at Edinburgh had shared a report that the Scottish Book Festivals had done, kind of looking at what they were doing, and there was a lot in there about taking this opportunity to reinvent, because we've already reinvented what we do so much. I mean, none of us did fully virtual festivals before 2020, and now suddenly we've done that, we've done hybrid things. And so if we're reinventing anyway, if we're taking the opportunity to kind of retrain our audiences about what to expect from us, then we can also look at ways that we deliver from a sustainability standpoint, and really be more mindful about that. I was really struck about all of the reports that came out about the way the environment started to rebound just in the short amount of time that we all locked down in mid 2020, and realizing the impact that something like that can make in a very short amount of time. And so when we start adding things back and getting back to quote unquote normal, we have to start thinking, why are we doing what we do? I think this is an opportunity for us to ask that question. Are there better ways for us to deliver content? Do we need to fly that author in? Do we need to do this in the way that we do? And maybe we could look at more things in terms of working with other festivals in our area. So if we're bringing an author in, perhaps they could travel to more than one event in that area rather than the constant flying back and forth. We can look at bringing people in virtually and trying to find ways to make that attractive for our audiences. So I think that we do have a responsibility, and the value of taking that responsibility seriously has been shown over the last couple of years. And I think now is a great opportunity to do that because, again, our audiences, I think, are receptive to that change and aware of why some of those things are necessary.
I couldn't agree more with Sean. I think we all have incorporated also different set of questions that we are automatically almost posing ourselves when programming our festivals, and when we're thinking about how to change them in the future. And sustainability is a key question, no question about that. I think also on the level of program that we all can do much more to use also our programs to highlight this set of questions, to use the platforms that we've established over decades with our festivals and publishing houses to interact with a broad audience just on the topic of climate change. Not only to be part of a mainstream, but truly to go perhaps a step forward to look on the local level what can be done. What can be done with the audiences, what can be done with local groups, and how authors with their not only books but also their activities, because very often authors are or have been involved in very wide range of activities concerning environmental change, how people can come together and create perhaps something new, or at least raise awareness, to use really our festivals and our networks to respond to very urgent matters. We all have them, be it with the question how our environments will change due to the changes that are awaiting us. And I mean, here in Slovenia, we still get a big portion of our energy from coal, and this will definitely transform regions because the mines will close down. So there is a set of issues that through the festivals can be addressed in an innovative way. So it's, again, not only an organizational aspect to this set of questions, but also a much more, I think, fundamental, substantial set of questions posed to us, how to deal with it.
Yes, completely agree with both of you. I think that all of us have the opportunity to help out in this way. For example, I know as publishers, for example, what kind of papers we choose, trying to work with publishers from our city. I don't know, maybe it could be worth just to try just to organize us gathering this kind of rules and just to work everyone in the same goal. Maybe it could be helpful. I don't know. But yes, obviously it's really, really important. I don't know. I don't believe so much with human beings, but yes, I think it's quite important.
Well, I think that our time is over, and well, in the old reality, which should be forgotten now, I think we could continue this conversation later on during the dinner or drink, but we have to end now, and I would like to thank you so much for this conversation, and I think that we still have a future, no matter how it will look like. Thank you so much for your ideas, and I hope that you enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure.
Great.